We're live.
Bum,
Instantaneously. I was thinking about maybe doing a series of videos with no titles and no descriptions and see how they worked. But that would be an intentional choice. Victims and victors. I'll tell you what, this idea plagues me in every area of my life. I have so many business and personal, not to mention family, not too much with my family though, which is good, relationships where I observe, and I'm sure I do this too, but I observe people playing a victim role and it's keeping them stuck and feeling sorry for themselves. And they just bitch and complain and whine about their situation, whatever it is. And it is infuriating as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, and as a hypnotist, and not being able to even help them. Oh, it drives me bananas. But I want to talk about victims and victors. This is a very, very, very hot topic for me. What do you think, Joshua?
I think you don't give a shit about it.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. So, I mean, victim mentality, it is pervasive in society. I can't speak too much outside of modern Western American society. I mean, I've traveled, but I've never extensively lived outside of America for any significant amount of time. I happen to live in a very liberal neck of the woods, very, very liberal, like beyond democratic liberal, just like no rules, super liberal area. And so my entrepreneurial values and drive and overachievement tendencies don't always go over well with a lot of my local friends.
Doesn't sink, does it?
And so, I mean, how do you deal with this? I mean, first of all, we all can get stuck in victim mentality in areas of our life, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bigger picture. For me, when I first heard this concept, I called bullshit on it because I liked to blame the situation. You know, it feels good to be a victim sometimes. It's not my fault. Like, because it was circumstances outside my control.
Right. Somebody else did it to me. Something else. It was the man. Whatever.
Right. And somebody said something to me, and I gave him so much pushback on it. And we had a very heated debate about.
How old were you? When did this happen? This reference?
28, maybe.
All right, cool. All right, that gives us like half your life ago, almost.
Yeah, well, yeah, almost. Yeah.
How old are you? Yeah. 54.
I'm going to be 53, I believe.
Yeah.
53 or 54, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, cool. But that gives us a good frame. Okay, so you're 28.
Yep. And so I basically said, well, wait a minute. Like they say, you need to take responsibility for what's going on in your life. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You know, like this stuff that is happening is completely outside of my realm of control. There's nothing that I could do about it. It's not my fault, somebody to blame. And they said, you're right. And here's the thing. If you take responsibility for it, then you also can take responsibility for coming up with a different outcome. And it was like, what? Wait. And I said, they said, look,
yes.
It's not that this type of results in your life or the problems or the circumstances don't matter, and that shit happens. And yes, will people screw you? Yes. Will you have bad experiences? Yes. But if you let that be the reason that you're not able to have what you want in your life,
right,
then you're letting that control you. And that was a big one for me because they must have known that one of my primary drivers of values is freedom.
Right.
And I don't like being controlled or feeling like I'm out of control. And they said, look, like what I know is that if I take 100% responsibility for everything that happens in my life and just look for how I created that in my life, it doesn't negate what anybody else is doing to create their role in it or whatever, but it gives me the empowerment from the inside to be able to say, okay, I can create a different outcome.
And you can create a different outcome in your life within your lifetime, not within your lifetime, not even within years. In many cases,
for me, like minutes, because the mere shift of going from that state of mind of victim, like everybody else is doing this to me, to saying, all right, I can be responsible. The responsible version of this conversation is this. And meaning that I can, then all of a sudden I feel empowered. Like, how did I create this? Well, I don't even necessarily, I used to stay in a lot in how did I create this situation in my life, because I wanted to make up a story that I could see that I was responsible for it. Right.
Right.
Now
Which is not always the case.
Right. But it was a bridge, right? For me.
Totally.
Because you can get stuck in that, like, how did I create this? And then it becomes an excuse to still stay stuck in the problem.
Right.
And it's a different sense of victimhood, right? The problem that I think that we confuse taking responsibility with blaming ourselves or other people, or being the blame of it. And who gives a shit who's to blame of it?
Right.
You want to be able to shift the conversation or shift the energy in yourself so that you can have a different outcome, regardless of whatever else the exchange looks like.
Maybe rather than saying taking responsibility, maybe a clearer way of saying that could be take leadership.
Personal leadership. Yeah.
You need to take the lead role in leading yourself and anybody else that's caught up in this problem to the answer. It's your responsibility to take point.
One tweak, when I say personal leadership, I agree with you, except for one thing: not take leadership of everything else, because that for other people means that you're trying to control them. And
a problem I often find myself falling into, I might point out.
Mine too.
Right.
That was a big issue for me, right? Holding and the woman that turned me on to these ideas and concepts and said to me, you're holding everybody else small. So nobody else can do what I can do. So shut up. I know the way, and I'm going to take responsibility. And this is where we're going. Fuck you.
Right.
And, so I isolated a lot of people.
That's a classic, like you're running too alpha, right? Yeah. You're thinking a little bit too much of yourself in a certain way.
So when I say personal leadership, I say, look, I can shift the entire situation energy-wise by shifting myself, by taking personal leadership for what my actions are, what my beliefs are, what that is. And whether somebody follows my lead or not, I'm going to lead by example. And it doesn't matter whether they come with me or not. If they're enrolled in coming with me, then great, we can go together.
I just thought of a really funny real world example.
Okay.
And so it has to do with renting an apartment in a building or a house with other apartments in it. And I'd like you to, most of us at some point have done that. Many of us are still doing that. And so you have an apartment, and let's say there are 3 other apartments in your building.
Okay.
And there's a shared lawn.
Right.
And there's some trash on the lawn.
Okay.
Okay, and you've repeatedly, because the kids downstairs, they have no sense of
no respect, no self. Yeah,
and those kids and their parents are the same way, and those kids are always putting trash on the lawn.
And I'm sick of it.
Totally sick of it. So you have a few options, right? One option, and maybe you're not even 100% sure that it's from the kids, but you're pretty sure. You haven't actually seen the kids putting the trash on the lawn, but they're the only ones, right? And so you could just complain about it and build up resentment. That's one option.
Mm-hmm.
You could go complain to the neighbors downstairs. You could text them, you could call them, you could knock on their door, you could leave them irritated notes, right, in their mailbox. You could go and talk to all of your other neighbors and have a little private meeting with them and then you could
About
all
how
go,
evil the other people are.
then you could all go and approach
Gang up on them.
the fourth tenant together and like all band against them, right? Burn them at the stake. That's another, or you could pick up the garbage.
Or you could adjust your line of thinking so it doesn't bother you.
Well, that's also an option. Sometimes I'm successful at that. I'm not that good at that part.
I'm not either. But
and I'm not saying that you should be responsible for your neighbor's garbage. What I'm saying is if it's bothering you that bad, step one, pick up the fucking garbage. Not because it's your fault, not because it's your responsibility, but because you want your lawn clean.
Yeah, because it's giving you peace of mind to have a clear space. Yeah.
Right? And if they see you repeatedly picking up their garbage, sooner or later a conversation will ensue, hopefully a positive one. Right? But the point is, instead of complaining, instead of pointing the finger, instead of like building a band of people to complain together, just solve the fucking problem, right? And in your business, it's the same way. And so the difference between someone who is perpetually stuck at start and never really takes the steps to get going, in my experience, always puts the blame of their situation and circumstances on outside forces other than themselves.
Yeah.
And there are always outside forces other than ourselves working against us all the time. Right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that the way that life works is we tune into different thoughts, feelings, ideas that resonate with us. Then we go around and we look for evidence that's going to support what we're already tuning into. And because we're looking for evidence, we're going to find it, right? And it's going to justify whatever it is that we're feeling so that then we get to see more of what those results are that we were looking for the evidence around, that we're going out to gather the evidence to have it look a certain way. And it works positively, quote unquote, positively and negatively as well. So like in the circumstance that you just described, whether you choose to solve the problem or not, what you're doing is you're looking for reasons, you're tuning into reasons. There's two sides of the story. You could look for evidence that supports how they disrespect you, how they don't care for you, and how they're doing it on purpose just to piss you off. And you're going to gather up all sorts of really valid evidence to support that point of view. Right. It's out there. You can justify anything, right?
100%.
And I'm assuming Hey Guys is Gene inside of the Art of Email Marketing, but maybe not. Anyway, so the opposite is also true, where you could look for evidence to say, well, wow, what is it? There must be something in me that I'm gathering up evidence to, I must want to be pissed off. I must get off on it or something and I could gather evidence to look for that type of thing. And then I could see different things and I could perhaps shift based on that. Or I could look for evidence that says, you know what, it's not anything about me. It's them. So for me to get upset with them is silly. But regardless of whatever it is, whatever you're looking for, whatever evidence you're looking to gather up, that's where you're going to stay. So do you want to stay pissed off? Do you want to stay stuck in the problem? Do you want to stay unable to move forward? Or do you want to be able to be responsible for your life and shift whenever you need to?
On the shift, I mean, again, to just use this very real world example of garbage in your lawn, right? What if not only did you clean up the garbage, but what if then, after everything was clean consistently, because you took care of the business, then you held a tenants meeting about what can we do to make this place even better, and set up a rotating system with all the neighbors of not only keeping the place clean, but upgrading, right? And now everybody's involved. Everybody's focused on making the place look great. Garbage isn't going to be an issue, right? So again, same resource, but that's the difference. Entrepreneurs, I love the definition of entrepreneurs taking resources from a lower level of productivity to a higher level of productivity. But complainers just don't do that.
Yeah, it comes down to taking it personally.
That's right.
Like whatever's going on, the situation is the situation, and not to get too personal on my own thing, but I remembered having a conversation with a different woman that really opened my eyes to something. And she said, look, like you're living your life out of the circumstances that are in between what you want to have happen instead of your vision. And I said, well, what the hell do you mean? And she goes, I want you to live from your vision. Like, where do you say you want to go? Because that's who you are. I mean, like she
Right.
knew what my personality was, and when I'm standing in the bigger person that I'm empowered to be, yes, I create magic, and I'm like, it's just fun and it's engaging, but you're stuck looking in the circumstances and living and making your decisions out of the circumstances. And what I've only recently realized in the last like 5 years or so, and I learned this concept way back when I was 28, 29, something like that, at a very close in point in time to the victim versus, taking responsibility versus not. And I hadn't understood like living from circumstances, and I didn't even realize that I was doing it, right? Until it starts to, like, I start listening to my language. Like every time I said always, this always happens.
Right.
Well, isn't that interesting? And I pause for a second and I evaluate the always. Well, that's based on a circumstance. It is not based on what is right now in this moment.
Right.
And could I choose a different outcome?
Yeah.
Right. And so what I'm getting at is that what I came to realize after going through some of Hale Dwoskin's stuff, not the baseline Sedona method stuff, but some of his more advanced training materials like the Fifth Way and so on, is he kept on asking people like, are you taking this personally? And they're like, well, of course I'm taking it personally. That's a stupid question. And I had to really wrestle with that and meditate on that and really understand it. And that's where the problems for me existed. Because anytime I was taking something personally, it meant that something about the situation or somebody else's attitude or whatever, it is I'm letting it control me. I'm
Right.
letting it be the one that dictates what that is. And I'm attached to being right, really. I mean, at the bottom line is that's why that ends up happening. Years ago, listening to Brian Tracy, he spoke of taking 100% responsibility. That shifted me that day. No excuses or blame, etc. Life changed, and that day forward, yeah, man. Whatever the spark is, I had a very similar experience and continue to on different minute levels and nuanced levels of distinctions. I totally agree with you, Marty.
Yeah, I got lucky with that one. Well, in a way, it happened early for me. In terms of that happened when I was in high school, entering high school, right? And I was born with leg deformity called femoral antiversion. And so my femurs in both of my legs, that's the bone between your hip and your knee, they're
Right.
both twisted in. And so what that meant is both of my feet basically pointed in at 45-degree angles. I couldn't walk without tripping over my feet and without literally my knees just banging into each other. It sucked. Like it really sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, as they get bigger and they get more, as they get older and they get more muscles, it's a minimal enough deformity that most people grow out of it essentially but I was a very non-athletic kid, and neither one of my parents had an athletic bone in their body. So I didn't play sports growing up. I had no hand-eye coordination. I played a lot of video games growing up. I didn't get outside much.
That gives you hand-eye coordination, doesn't it?
No? For sure. Well, I mean, as an adult, I finally adjusted, but as a kid, I had zero coordination and sucked at sports and didn't like them. And so what happened is my parents split up, and then I stopped going to my annual exams at the hospital to check on my legs, and bam, all of a sudden I was just about to go into high school, just about to go into ninth grade. And I had been convinced by Matt Daigle that he rode my bus, and that he had convinced me to join the cross country running team, because we both knew I wasn't going to play soccer. And he's like, "Do you really just want to spend all your time sitting around by yourself at home?" No, is the answer. And so he convinced me. I had been doing hikes with Boy Scouts and stuff, so I wasn't completely messed up at that point. But like my legs were still, like my feet still pointed in at 45-degree angles. Like I still got made fun of all the time for my legs, right?
45. That's, I mean, I'm like picturing walking that way with that situation myself, and holy crap, that's
it's like the duck walk joke thing, like the kids, when you walk like a duck, like that's exactly
but the opposite, right?
Well, yeah, with the end, it was all messed up. So anyway, the point is that what happened is I joined the cross country running team, and I was the slowest person on the team. And when I went out and I started running during the warm up, we ran for like a mile and a half. And after a mile, my lungs started burning, my legs started cramping, my whole body was in pain because I wasn't used to it. As this happens to everyone when you run for the first time, or when you run when you're really out of shape, right?
Right.
It kills you. But it was the first time I had ever been hit with endorphins hard. And what happened is I got super high and felt freedom and relaxation for the first time in my memory, and like felt a sense of calm and peace. This is my first memory of calm, like real serenity.
Right.
And I wanted more of that. And so I kept coming back. And what ended up happening is...
Did you say, I like it, I love it, I want some more of it?
I like it, I love it, I want some more of it.
I said, did you say that? Would you?
But so what happened is 2 weeks later, I went in for my annual leg exam, and they were like, crap, we really should have corrected this a long time ago with braces, but now you're too old and your bones are hardening up, and either we're going to have to break your legs, flat breaks in both legs, spin them around forward, and put 6 to 8 pins in each leg, or you're just going to imagine, or you're just going to have to live with it.
Good God, man!
I'm like, fuck. What should I do?
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of the fall, right? I've been running. I've been struggling to jog a little bit in the cross country running team. And what happened was, I was like, well, if I get the operation, will I ever be able to run again? And I just found this love of running. It was the only thing that I had.
It turned you on. Yeah.
And they're like, no, you will not ever run again. I mean, no, for all sakes. I mean, maybe, but no, And I was like, all right. And so we scheduled in the operation for January 19th, which was the day after my birthday, in the middle of winter in New Hampshire. Because I figured and they said, after we put the pins in, you're going to have full casts for 6 months to a year. Jeez. And then full braces from hips down for 6 months to a year after that. Just
a side note question that I have for you. Is the treatment the same today, or has it improved?
Well, the problem is that my bones were hard.
No, I get that, but I mean, like if somebody were to be faced with the exact same situation today,
I something where I haven't kept up on the.
Got it. I was just curious. Sorry.
So yeah.
Continue.
So I was just like, crap, what am I going to do here? And so we scheduled it in so that I could run my first and last cross-country running season. And so we scheduled it in for the winter, and then I went back to cross-country the next day, and I gave it everything I had. And every single day for that 3 months, I would run to school for 5 miles, go to school, run at practice, run home after I was done. It was like the last 3 months of running I had in my life. And I went from the slowest guy on the team to being in the top 7 okay, in my first season. But the thing that happened was I put so much of my heart and soul into it. I was this like skinny weakling, okay? The muscles in my legs got so strong that they literally bent my bones back around forward and basically corrected the problem, and I didn't ever have to have the operation. It was like a medical miracle, and and that's why running is so important to me. Okay,
right,
and
it goes a whole lot deeper than that in you, brother. And it's a part of your identity of who you are today, and it extends everywhere.
And so, anyway, the reason I tell that story is because it doesn't have to be in a business setting. It doesn't have to be, like you can learn this thing, this shift in perspective in all sorts of different ways. And some people just never get it. But,
well, and how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So what that means is that when you, wherever you go, whatever the circumstance is, whatever the conflict is, whatever the icing on the cake and the name, when you hear this, the names change, but the story remains the same. Well, you take you with you wherever you go. So if you're habitually looking to, your identity is habitually gathering evidence in a certain way on a certain subject, that carries over into other areas, every other area of your life.
Right.
And it's problematic.
Right.
Or it's not
advantageous,
right?
Depending on what you're talking about. Right?
Yeah, it either serves you to bring you closer to where you say you want to go, or it doesn't serve you. It brings you farther away from where you say you want to go. The problem is if you add the personalization into, did it bring me closer or did it bring me further away? Well, it brought me further away. Well, then I fucked up, or somebody else is to blame, or blah 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 blah. Now that's not serving me, because what I'm doing is I'm now not able to course correct and move closer, or notice even if what happened brought me closer or further away, or what aspects of it brought me closer or further away.
That is correct. So focus on what you can influence and control. Stop whining about other people. Stop complaining about the situation. Focus on what you've got and what you can create with it. Right? What can you do to move things forward?
And here's something that was really funny to me, because the same woman, that her name is Sandy taught me to, look from vision versus circumstances. And she got done teaching me all about that. And then we became friendly, and we were going out for breakfast or something. And she goes, but sometimes it feels good to play the victim. Just acknowledge that you're doing it. And it blew my mind, because she's like, look, I do it, but I acknowledge that I'm doing it. And because doesn't it feel good sometimes? Yeah. So what just came up for me is like, when you say, just stop doing that, don't do that, don't blame other people. Well, do it. If you just can't shift and you're so far in it, then give yourself permission to roll around in it until you can be different.
Right. Then get out and take a shower when you're ready. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So give yourself permission to let it all go. It's when you fight with that shit about and judging yourself for how you're judging yourself.
That's right.
and for the thoughts that you're having, that we have problems, right? It's your reactions to your automatic reactions that create the real issue.
I found with social media, this also applies, and it's it's the don't badmouth anybody rule. So here's what I mean. With 99 Days, for example, we have a whole bunch of people who are in there making videos every day. And some of them are attracting an audience and some of them are not, right? And what I've seen is that nobody wants to follow a smack talker. Like, if all you're doing is going around complaining, whining, bitching, moaning about someone else's way of doing things, something that you disagree with, you can get attention, but you're going to get a lot of negative attention, right?
And you're going to get a lot of people that think the same way, and what you're going to have is this pity party.
That's right. Or people that are just generally going to speak negatively about other people in general, so you'll get a big following of trolls,
Yeah, which means that you're the next person that they're going to talk negatively about,
Just
right? That's it's so. I learned this from my uncle, actually, when I was about 14 years old.
Okay.
And he said he was teaching me how he takes applications for. He owns a self-made millionaire in real estate, and he was showing me how he takes applications for apartment rentals. And he listened. He said, "Look, I listen very closely to what they say about the previous experiences with landlords." And he said, "You know, if they say, you know, this person, you know, did this and did that, I don't want to become the next landlord that screws them."
Right.
And I was like, "Holy shit, that's amazing!" And you know, like it is an extension of this
revelation in dating, ladies and gentlemen. If you're single and you're out there in the dating world, same rule applies. I can tell you. Pay attention to how they speak about previous boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, partners, whatever, because you're next in line.
How they speak, period.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like how they communicate is a window. You know, once you get past the representative that's on their best behavior, that's trying to put on a good show.
Right.
But you can always usually hear through the words to the music if you listen.
Yeah, if you're paying attention.
You know.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. And you're the same way. I mean, we're all the same way, right?
Absolutely.
So be aware.
Absolutely.
Be aware of how you're talking and in what tone and how you're framing the other people in your life especially when you're communicating and meeting and getting connecting with new people.
And a last piece of advice, and then I'll get off the soapbox. Boom, boom. Is that perhaps you could give yourself, if you would be open to thinking about it, that maybe I have a blind spot in this area. Could it be possible that I have a blind spot for how this is showing up in my life and limiting me?
Right.
And if you allow yourself to say, yeah, I don't know what it is, but maybe I have a blind spot, then you give yourself the opening to take responsibility, because now you're saying, okay, I don't know how to fix it. I can't fix it, but maybe that's because I have a blind spot in my life. And so I need to recognize that maybe what I think I'm saying and how I think I'm being and how I believe that I'm coming across to other people is not how I'm being perceived by them.
Right.
And just be open to taking a look at that and go, oh, you know.
And again, it comes back to that victim or victor mentality. And being a victor, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean a victor over someone else. In fact, in most cases, the biggest victors are outpacing themselves. As good as it feels for us to unite against a common enemy, the reality is you're the only enemy. When you're growing yourself, when you're improving yourself working on yourself in any area of your life, your spiritual development, your physical health and nutrition and fitness, your financial well-being, your emotional development and your relationships with your family, friends, and people that are close to you, or business related, all these areas, like you can compare yourself against somebody else all day long and be jealous of them or angry with them for doing things a different way than you do, or vice versa, right? But the reality is that when you're doing anything, if you're not simply trying to outdo yourself to become a better human being, then what are you doing? Honestly.
Well, I mean, it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And there's even a sixth one that isn't talked about, but he actually acknowledged it. But what you're talking about there is when you get past the four lower levels of the hierarchies in Maslow's hierarchy, it's self-actualization.
Right.
But it's tough for you and I, who live in this space already, to remember that not everybody
try to live in the space,
right? Or have seen that we are able to watch and say what you just said, right? Like at least try and acknowledge that we're not nearly 100% successful 100% of the time, right? And that's big, right? But think about what had to evolve through the other levels of hierarchy, of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in order for you to get to the point where you can be there and say that type of, and get to that point. And that's where, when people are at different wavelengths, that for me is what's going on, right? They're just not able to hear you or connect with you. And there's nothing wrong with it. But for your peace of mind, maybe make sure that you're continuing to attract the people at whatever level, and higher, so that you can aspire, if that's what it, is possible to you. Because, when we go back to safety and security and physiological needs not being met, all other things are off.
That's true. It's absolutely true. And right now, things are stressy. Things are crazy. And even if things are stable, the fear of loss is enormous right now.
The
uncertainty about what's going to happen next month, what's going to happen in 2021. Like the immediate future is nobody knows, right? Yeah. But the reality is nobody ever knows. But that's the point.
Yeah, but see, then there's the people like you and me and others like us that have either trained themselves or are naturally this way to be comfortable being in that unknown space, being comfortable creating from the unknown unknowns, right.
Yep.
And that's not, at least it wasn't for me. Let me take responsibility and not make it generalized and say, it's not an easy thing. Well, for me, it wasn't an easy battle to get to the point where it wasn't just words, where I actually started to believe that and understand that on a visceral level and made it a part of my being, of my identity,
Yeah, for me, everyone was just always pissed off at me because the way I would see things, the way I would hear things, the things that were going on in my head were just so much more real than what was happening in reality around me, that I was always just in such daydream mode that I generally believe my imagination more than I believe the facts around me. And that drives people.
I'm the same way. My motto is, don't try to find yourself, create your bigger future. Just the best way to predict the future is to create it, is to and that's a Peter Drucker quote. I was using it for years before I knew it was Peter Drucker, and then I started studying his other quotes, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's brilliant. I mean, I knew he was brilliant from all of his body of work, but man, anyway.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we've
well, I've had fun.
I think we've talked about victims and victors enough. Hopefully we made our point. I think that's all we need to talk about today. I think we're good.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, if there's anything you want us to talk about, let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome.
Over and out.
See ya.